There's some exciting updates with a lot of the bills we've been working on here this session. First, the North Puget Sound College bill, Everett partnership with Washington State University, last night had a real productive meeting with business representatives and representatives of cities in Snohomish County. And there's a real concern in Snohomish County over the number of engineers that are retiring. Boeing cited that 25% of their engineering workforce is almost at the age of retirement. And clearly our current higher education opportunities in this state will not meet that need, so we'll have to go elsewhere. I'm really excited to announce that the North Puget Sound College bill passed out of the House today through executive action. We'll go to the House Rules Committee. Here in the Senate, it will likely be scheduled for executive action tomorrow. Cutoff is next week. So we're working hard to make sure that that bill keeps moving here in the Senate as it has in the House. I also had two bills move out of committee today in our early learning and K-12 committee, one regarding innovation schools. These are schools that have sprouted up across the state really just through the acknowledgement that all children learn differently. The schools have specific missions to identify issues related to either high-risk students and what their needs might be, students from lower socioeconomic classes, learners with certain, or students with certain learning disabilities. And so this bill is just a directive bill to have OSPI create a database, a website for these schools and other districts that might want to try to implement some of these innovative measures, to share best practices, see what's worked, what hasn't worked throughout the state. We amended the bill today to include higher education institutions in that database and on that website. As we've been talking about all session, we need to start improving on the transition points through the continuum of education from early ed through K-12 all the way into either four-year college, community college, technical college, or whatever young people decide to pursue after high school. So I think this is a critical first step to making sure that we get that information disseminated out to our school districts and our colleges and community colleges. We also today had a bill out of our early learning K-12 committee that will establish an Office of Native Education. There's been a position within the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction that it advises OSPI and acts as a liaison to our tribes throughout the state with regard to the needs of Native children in Washington state, trying to emphasize the importance of teaching things like tribal sovereignty, culture, and history that are so critical to our state's heritage. And the bill will establish a permanent director position within OSPI that will be a director of Native Education, and also sets up a fund managed by the state treasury which will establish a public-private partnership where we can receive philanthropic donations to help fund this effort, along with federal dollars that to date have funded this position and will continue to into the future. Finally, I introduced a bill this week in our Human Services and Corrections Committee to create a restorative justice program in Washington state. What restorative justice is an opportunity for juvenile offenders, victims' families, the victims themselves, and other community organizations to come together and try to heal any wounds that occurred as the result of the offender's criminal activity. These would only be available in very, very limited situations where a nonviolent crime has occurred for an amount less than $50. Currently, the juvenile courts have the ability to counsel and release these juvenile offenders by typically putting them out to some type of community-based treatment program. What this will do is create an opportunity for more of a mediation setting that allows the victim the chance to be heard, gives the offender the opportunity to really admit guilt, to hear from the victim, understand how his or her actions impacted that person and their family and the community at large. And across the United States and worldwide, this is a proven method to really reduce recidivism, provide more closure and a sense of justice for victims and their families, as well as we heard at committee testimony that victims have walked away from these sessions with a renewed sense of self-esteem. Sometimes being the victim of a crime can be a very emotionally damaging experience. And so I think it's just critically important that we take these opportunities to try to improve the lives of both parties affected. We received a lot of communication this week about all of these bills and a lot of other issues, people wanting updates on our supplemental budget, which we have plans to vote on. And so I really appreciate all the communication and look forward to continuing to stay in touch with constituents and concerned people throughout the state as the session continues and we face more important choices that are going to impact the residents of Washington.